एक सेकेंड. Hello, good afternoon everyone. So today I'll be discussing disaster management, and there were two prominent questions that came from disaster management in your GS paper 3. So let's begin. Now the questions were pretty much simple, and it was very much current affairs oriented. Why? Because we have been witnessing heavy rainfall, and because of this reason UPSC also targeted flooding and disaster resilience framework this time. So the first question that we got here was that flooding in urban areas is an emerging climate induced disaster. Now understand, they asked you about flooding, and where in urban areas is an emerging climate induced disaster. Discuss the causes of this disaster, mention the features of two such major floods in the last 2 decades in India. That means they are asking you for the two events that happened in last 2 decades. That means you have to actually tell out about the events that happened with respect to flooding in last 2 decades. Then they asked you what? Describe the policies, the frameworks in India that aim at tackling such floods. So just understand, this is a very beautiful question framed out. Why? Because in single question they have asked you multiple aspects and they have covered multiple dimensions. Now here they are saying flooding in urban areas. So flooding in urban areas, you can simply start by telling about what is flooding. That means excessive of rainfall, or over like monsoon was there but there was over excessive rainfall by 20%, which is leading to excessive flooding in the areas. Either you can start this way or you can go the other way. That means you can talk about what were the guidelines by the NDMA. You can also talk about the guidelines that were coming from IPCC. So what happened this time was that nearly 64% of the Indian sub-districts were experiencing excessive rainfall. And because of this, they have experienced what? Flooding. Now, I would prefer you to go with the stats. Why? Because probably this is the reason why we always do current affairs. So the examiner should also know about this, that okay, the person knows about the current scenario, the person knows about the current situation, and then we are talking relevant facts about it. So as I gave you this number, that 64% of the Indian subjects are experiencing excessive rainfall, and because of which there is a lot of flooding. Apart from this, IPCC has also said what? That in coming years, India would be experiencing a high frequency in rainfall, which will predominantly lead to flooding. Now we have got our facts, we have got our evidences based on which we are saying that we are witnessing what? Flooding in certain areas. Now the question is saying that flooding in urban areas, that means they have directly said that you need to mention about urban floods. Fine. Now the next part of the question says that discuss the causes of the disaster. Now very simple and easy part of the question, but the point is that we have to focus on the issues which are having a grave concern onto the country. Now what are the causes because of which we are experiencing this disaster. That means because of which we are experiencing flooding. So if you have a little bit idea, then you will find that Gurgaon is one of the so well developed metropolitan city this time, and then too this city is not able to deal with the floods. That means one of the major issue, even though in the metropolitan area, is what? Drainage system. So we have issues with drainage system. Other than that, because of so many people who are migrating from the poor towns or smaller towns and cities to the urban areas, to the big cities. Why? Because of probably because of jobs and opportunities, etc. So because of this, what is happening is too much of urbanization. So firstly, we are facing issues with drainage system. Secondly, we are facing issues with urbanization. Why? Because we are not having planned urbanization. That means there is no planned urbanization. Now, when I say that there is no planned urbanization, so just understand that even Delhi, the last, the model based on which the Delhi model was planned was close to 1900s. That means it was like close to 1976. Now, what I mean to say is that we are not revamping our plan system, and once we are not revamping our plan system, then disasters are something which are imminent to come, and I don't feel in any way we can reduce these disasters. Why? Because these are climate induced changes that are happening. So third thing is climate induced changes. Now, climate induced changes, that means global warming is also one of the reasons of flooding. Then we have emission of GHGs, that are your greenhouse gases, because of which again there's like excessive heating of the planet that is happening, and again there visibly melting of glaciers. So if you see, this is like a cycle which is going on, and because of which we don't find any solution to it, except the fact that we need to work on our climate system, we need to work on our drainage pattern, we need to work on our urbanization, etc. Now, other than that, deforestation. That means there is excessive clearance of forests. Now, this is very sorted and simple to understand, that if we have like a forest over here in our lands, what is going to happen is that all the rainwater is going to get absorbed because of soil. So what is going to happen is that we will be able to control such disasters. And if we are having deforestation, that means felling of trees and then clearance of the forest, what is going to happen is that we are going to have this impervious structure. Impervious structure, that means the structure of concrete on which our buildings are framed, etc. So because of urbanization, because of poor drainage system, we are having what? Impervious structures. And this impervious structure is mainly related to what? Concrete. Right. Other than that, we have also we are also facing one of the issue is that is encroachment on water bodies. Now, this is again one of the very hot topic, and why so? Because in our current affairs section also, and in previous so many years, we have always found that a lot of bureaucrats have been stuck because of this reason. Why? Because there has been a lot of encroachment on water bodies. So this is again one of the very, very important reasons because of which we are facing floods. Now I have told you all the key points because of which we are facing the issues of flood. Now you could elaborate about this. You can bring out multiple reports and guidelines from NDMA, from SDMA, then from IPCC, and similarly the international frameworks, etc. That means what are they talking about, or what are they saying about the flooding disaster, and how it could actually affect the country's climate and country's infrastructure, etc. Right. So one part of the question was, as I told you, flooding in urban areas. So I told you the introduction part. Then they said discuss the causes of this disaster. Then we have discussed the multiple causes of this disaster. Then they say mention the features of two such major floods that occurred in last 2 decades. That means the next part of the question is asking you that has there any incidents that has occurred, or is there any event that occurred in past 2 decades? So if it has, then you have to actually talk about it. So what happened was that just a minute. Okay. So in previous years, what we have seen is that 2 incidences have happened. And what are those 2 incidences? One is the Mumbai floods, and the other one is the Chennai floods. Now, both the 2 incidences that happened had a very catastrophic impact on the country. Why? Because in both the floods there were like separately going, it was close to loss of not 500, I would say close to loss of 1000 of lives here, and again close to 500 to 1000 of lives here. Now, if flood is occurring, it is not only leading to loss of life, it is again leading to what? Property damage, then habitation damage, then you have urban infrastructure damage. So both the floods have led to what? A lot of human life damage, and at the same time we had property, asset damage, etc. Fine. Now, other than that, these 2 events in the Indian history, that means in 2005 and 2015 onwards, that means that is the 2 decades framework that I have covered in this question. So both this incidents has led to a loss of damage, and has brought a lot of damage to the country also, and as well as to the state also. So this is definitely going to hamper the GDP of the country. Then it is also going to affect the growth of the states. And as you see, it's Mumbai and the other one is Chennai. So growth of the states, and both of them are one of the key prominence of the tech sector as well. So growth of the states. Fine. This you can elaborate by going more in detail. I have just told you the key points. Now the next part of the question says that describe the policies and frameworks in India that aim at tackling such floods. That means what should be the policies, what should be the framework that would be eventually helpful in tackling the floods. So for that we should know that what are the agencies that are dealing with it. Then at the same time we should also know about what are the guidelines that these agencies have given us, and at the same time we should also know about the disaster management plan with respect to flooding. That means India as a country is doing what in order to keep themselves resilient into all the disasters that are going to happen in future. One such disaster is going to be flood. So what are the agencies and the frameworks that are going to deal with it? Okay, so I shall write it over here only. Now, the policies and frameworks in India that aim at tackling such floods. So first we should know about NDMA. NDMA. Now, NDMA is National Disaster Management Act. Now, this act is talking about what? Having state disaster management authority and having National Disaster Management Authority. Now, this Disaster Management Act is talking about how to deal with the disaster. That means in this case, the floods. Fine. Then I told you that Mumbai and Chennai, they have encountered what? Property damage, asset damage, then lives, growth of states, GDP, etc. Then this could also be checked through the framework, and this is happening how? By having what? Smart cities. Right? So another one is, or another framework and the policies with respect to tackling the floods will be having what? Smart cities. Fine. Now, two things we have discussed. Then there are furthermore what? We can go for education and awareness program. So next one is your education and awareness program. Fine. Then we have plans with respect to CCAP. Now, what is CCAP? That is Climate Change Action Plan. Fine. Then we have National Disaster Management Act. That means we are having what? Disaster Management Acts. We are having Disaster Management Act. Here we were having National Disaster Management Authority, then we are having Disaster Management Plans. Now, this is how the question has to be attempted. That means first you had to talk about floods. There we have given all the facts and figures which speaks volume about the disaster management plan of the country. Then we had to talk about what is eventually leading to the causes of the disaster of flood. Then we had to talk about what had there any incidences that has happened in last 2 decades, and if they have, then we have to talk about them. I told you about Chennai and Mumbai floods. Then they asked you about is there any way to get rid of this? Is there any way to check them? Any mitigation, any preventive measures? So yes, we have got NDMA. That means we have the Disaster Management Act also. Then we have Disaster Management Plan also. Then we have Smart City Missions also. Then we have CCAP, that is Climate Change Action Plan also. Then we have Education and Awareness Program also. So all this is dedicated towards encountering the floods, and similarly we'll be able to deal with the other disasters as well. So in conclusion part, what you can do is that how these agencies and authorities have been working diligently to deal with the floods that have been happening in the past as well as in present, and not only with the floods but also with respect to the other disasters. Fine. So this was with respect to this flooding, how to deal with flooding. Now next we are going to the next question, that is what is disaster resilience? right? What is disaster resilience, they asked you. Then how is it determined? So what is disaster resilience? How is it determined? Describe various elements of resilience framework. That means we have to talk about the various elements of the frameworks that are dealing with with this disaster resilience. Also mention the global targets of Sendai framework for disaster risk reductions. That means we have to talk about particularly about what? About the Sendai framework for disaster risk reduction. Fine. Now the point is that what is disaster resilience? So disaster resilience, now we all know what is disaster. That means it is going to be calamity. It could be natural, it could be man-made, right? Resilience is how are we able to adapt and how are we able to withstand. What is our preparedness for this? How are we going to resolve the issue that would be happening either in present or in future? So disaster resilience deals with the ability to adapt, withstand the calamity. It could be natural, it could be man-made, which would have a tendency to lead to disaster. Now, how is it determined? That means how would you know that whether we have that disaster resilience or not? That means what is our preparation, or whether our geography or our structure is even permitting us to do so or not. So see, how should we go about? First, we need to, how is it determined? Yeah. First we need to do what? We need to check the areas. We need to check the areas as in what? That means what is the vulnerability? What is the vulnerability of the regions? For example, if you see, I told you about floods in where? Mumbai and Chennai area, right? Then we witness landslides in the area of Uttarakhand, fine. So if we are witnessing these things depending upon the regions, right? Similarly, the areas of the West Bengal are witnessing frequent cyclones. So that way we need to have a framework where we need to know which region is vulnerable to which disaster. So we need to have a check on the vulnerability area. Now after that, once we know that okay, we have got the vulnerability regions, we have this mapping system done. Next thing is, that means are we prepared for those disasters? For example, if we know that flood is going to take place, are we prepared for this or not? So next is your preparedness. That means you need to check the preparedness of with respect to if the disaster that happens. For example, in West Bengal, when we have cyclones, so all our disaster management authorities are very much planned. Why? Because they have this thing in their framework that at what time, at what period of the month we are going to encounter such disaster, or like cyclones, etc. Now once we know about the vulnerability, once we know about the preparedness, we need to check our capacity. Capacity talks about what? How much adjustment could be made, right? So what is our capacity to deal with that disaster, or what is the capacity of the people? That means for the people who are there, for the localites that matter. So are they able to adjust? How will we go about? So adjustment. Now next one is your risk management. That means I told you that we have loss of life, we have loss of property, we have loss of assets. So what is the risk management that or how is the risk management that we are able to take in? That means to what limit of risk we are able to endure. That is the another one. Now other than that, we have to also talk about what are people, that means those people in that region, will they be able to adapt to those things or not. So, and to us also, why? Because are we ready for that adaptability? That means are we ready that someday or other we are going to have this disaster, and what is the frequent response we have? So are we adaptable to it? Then the next one is your sustainability. That means how sustainably we can use the resources in order to check the disaster. So we need to check the sustainability factor as well. Fine. Now this could be written in detail with respect to how is it determined. That means the area, the our own self, how the management and how the authorities are able to deal with that disaster. So our preparedness for the disaster, that means how disaster resilient we are. That means if any day there is any landslide, there is any flood, or there is any kind of disaster we encounter, so what is our are we determined to handle it? Now describe various elements of a resilience framework. That means we have this. Now how do you know that what are the elements, or do you have, or do you know about the elements of a resilience framework? So elements of resilience framework. So how are we going to access the risk, etc. So first is no matter how much or when the disaster is going to occur, the risk assessment is primarily there. Why? Because we should able to assess the risk that is going to come with the disaster. For example, if there is one region of Mumbai, say, where we know that flooding is any day or any time going to occur, and at the same time we have got the news of what, that West Bengal is going to have a big cyclone. Now risk assessment is there, that which area is more vulnerable to this risk. After knowing the risk assessment, again we have to go for preparedness. Then we have to think about recovery. Then we have to think about rehabilitations. Fine. Now other than that, what we need to do is, we need to also think about what, how much awareness is there among the people. For example, we have these encroachment areas by the people, especially in the very vulnerable areas. So are the people aware? That means this part of the time or this part of the month is going to encounter cyclone, and if people are very much aware of it, then definitely they will migrate. And if they are able to migrate, that means this is one of the very important element of resilience framework. Fine. Now other than that, what is going to happen is that we need to also have what, collaborations and partnerships. Collaboration and partnership. Why? Because for example, if you see the regions of UP, if you see the regions of Madhya Pradesh, if we have collaboration between the states, and if we have collaboration between the countries, then also it is going to be very effective. collaboration and partnership between the countries, etc. Why? To for this disaster resilience and to check the disaster. Now, other than that, I have told you about risk assessment. We have talked about preparedness, recovery, rehabilitation, awareness, collaboration, and partnership. The next thing that we can go for is what are the plans for prevention and mitigation? That means first we'll try to control it, and if anyhow things become out of control, then do we have our plans ready for that also? So that is for with respect to prevention and mitigation. Fine. This we need to do it in detail, but this could be explained in detail, but these are something like key points that you need to keep in mind. Now the next thing in the question was also mention the global targets of Sendai framework for disaster risk reduction. That means what are the Sendai framework for disaster risk reduction 2015 to 2030. That means see, Sendai framework has talked about 7 frameworks, that means 7 targets. So we shall discuss about the 7 targets. Okay, I shall do the 7 targets over here. Fine. That means Sendai framework for disaster risk reduction is having what? 7 targets. Now, what are those targets? So, one is your target A, target B, target C. Now, target A is talking about what? Reducing global disaster mortality. That means the entire check is over what? Reducing the mortality globally. Fine. Then we have target B. Now, what is target B talking about? Target B is talking about the number of affected people. Should be reduced. Then we have target C with us. Now target C is talking about what? Target C is talking about what? Reducing the what? Economic losses. Fine. Then we have target D. Now target D is talking about what? Target D says what? Damage to critical infrastructure and basic services. Damage to critical infrastructure. This should be reduced. So damage to critical infrastructure and basic services. Then we have target E with us. Now what is target E talking about? So target E is talking about what? Increasing the number of countries for effective strategy. So number of countries for risk reduction, right? Then we have target F. Now what is target F talking about? So target F is talking about what? International cooperation. So international cooperation for resilience. And finally we have last target, that is G, which is what? Which is talking about EWS, that is early warning system for risk reduction. So early warning system for risk risk reduction. Fine. So we have A, we have B, we have C, we have D, we have E, we have F, we have G. Now this was the Sendai framework that was dealing with this disaster risk reduction. Fine. So just a quick recap. This is about the flooding portion. Now once flooding is there, we have, this is the reasons, the causes, etc. Then we have Sendai framework. Now the Sendai framework question is about disaster resilience. We have discussed about disaster resilience, we have discussed about the elements of resilience framework, and then we have discussed about what is Sendai framework talking about. So there were two questions from disaster management, and both of them were very much related to your current section. So if you have been preparing your current affairs well, there was nothing which need to be done from the static portion. Everything could have been covered from the current affair itself. So thank you so much. All the best for your optionals.